Federal government suspends petrol subsidy remover temporarily. And of course, we still have two more here. And this says it will be resolved soon. Federal government reacts to viral video of stranded Nigerian students in desert. And Jackpot, nothing wrong with relocating abroad for opportunities, says Femi Additional.
All right, we move to the Premium Times newspaper. This one says fresh crisis hits APC as Vice Chairman writes Buhari files suit against Adamu Umisore. 2023 polls, why opposition lost Buhari. Federal government suspends subsidy removal. Missing governorship aspirant found dead in Enugu. Tentenas leadership, Tinubu meets APC governors, call for unity, cooperation with party leadership. Tinubu holds dual citizenship of Nigeria, Guinea, Atiku tells court. Nigeria to spend $1.2 million on buses to evacuate citizens from Sudan. Some more stories still on the Premium Times. 2023 UTME, JAM to start releasing results soon, official. Elumelu becomes Transcorp's biggest shareholder, amasses 9.7 billion shares. Kogi APC governorship aspirants ask court to nullify primary election. Nigerian army's fighting power significantly increased since 2015. Buhari missing barrels of oil. Malami finally appears before reps. Panel says allegation baseless. Kaduna train attack. Court rejects Toko Mamu's bail application. Court refuses to grant request seeking to postpone census. And finally, IPAC urges APC to zone Senate presidency to Southeast South. That's all from the Premium Times, and move to another paper.
All right, now to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And of course, we have quite a number of headlines here too on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. And this is on fuel subsidy. Restore local refining, says NLC as federal government holds subsidy remover. And of course, still on Sudan, Nigerian student trapped in desert. Don't blame Buhari's government for not rescuing all Chibok girls. And of course, that's what the presidency is saying. Don't blame Buhari's all right. We have that done to Southwest governors leverage on constitution amendment on electricity and railway. We've not approved new Alaafin or your government, says Adegoke court the reserves judgment against Adedoyin orders. Census ill-timed, Afenifere tells Buhari. I look forward to working with you, UK Prime Minister Sunak writes Tinubu. Thanks NAS speakership. Kaduna member-elect makes case for Gatti. And of course, still looking at May 29, APC rallies support for smooth transition, says Tinubu, Hill and Arthi. And of course, let's see if you have more top stories here coming from the Vanguard newspaper this morning. This says governors to meet Buhari on new revenue formula presentation to NAS. Insecurity, how adoption of non-kinetic approach assisted armed forces. Irabo is coming up with that. And of course, we take two more presidential polls. Overconfidence, bad tactical moves cost opposition victory. That's what Buhari is saying. And the last one says, my administration placed over 50,000 children of diseased army on some kind of palliative. And that's all from the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
All right, and moving to the Daily Trust newspaper, first story says Buhari, Atiku, Obi, others are victims of overconfidence. And some more stories here says Nigeria Daily, real reason Nigerian students fleeing Sudan were left stranded in the desert. Kogi governorship, Adeyemi Audu asked court to avoid APC primary. Gave Tinubu breathing space. Supporters urge lobbyists. Court orders DSS to release 3 PDP members. Buhari, Nigeria's fighting power, strongest in 7 years. Elections, opposition victims of overconfidence. Buhari on that one. And some more stories. NEC malls extension of fuel subsidy removal. Nigerian students fleeing Sudan stranded. Buhari arrives army parade in military uniform. Airfares may rise as airlines exchange rate hits 610 naira to $1. And we'll just take one more from the Daily Trust. This one says why evacuation on Nigerians in Sudan is being delayed. We move to another paper.
All right, let's see if we have another paper here this morning. Okay, and still looking at some of the top headlines there. All right, let's also look more here, and we have this. All right, this actually isn't coming up. Okay. All right, now over to the Guardian newspaper front page. Let's take this. After $800 million palliative, federal government suspends subsidy, cites wrong timing. And let's look at some other headlines. And of course, it says, hope for Nigeria, other feed importers as World Bank sees sustained fall in prices. Nigeria's drug crisis hits 500 billion naira worth of seizures yearly. And of course, APC crisis. Lookman drags Adamu to court over alleged breach of party constitution. And Spurs fight back to hold Manchester United. Newcastle thrash Everton. And let's take more stories still on the front page of The Guardian. This says Malami Knox rep says claims of illegal $2.4 billion oil sale false. And still on Sudan crisis, confusion, logistic hurdles trail, evacuation. And let's see this. Lagos government attracts over $1 billion investment in data center facilities. Arewa stakeholders tax Tinubu on credible Senate leadership. Okebo Kola, Lord's Jam for inclusiveness in 2023 UTMA. And of course, the last one here says EFCT appeals. Judgment in suit linking 14 properties, 400 million naira to Kogi governor.
All right, a couple of more stories from the Nigerian Tribune. Fuel subsidy, be ready to pay 100,000 naira minimum wage, NLC tells federal government. And sustain solemn Ramadan practices, cleric tells Muslims. 2023 election, opposition lost due to overconfidence complacency. Buhari, 10 burnt to death as petrol-laden tanker explodes in Jos. And some more stories says Niger governor appoints new head for pilgrims board. Group calls for timely airlift of the intending pilgrims. Cleric seeks prayer for smooth transition of government on May 29. Complete payment by May 2, Lagos tells intending Hajj pilgrims. And this one says, my calophone invention will soon be globally accepted. Some more stories here while we move to another paper. This one says, by the Nigerian Tribune, new Alafin likely to emerge before May 29, or your kingmaker. We go on that break. When we come back, we'll take the analysis. Stay with us.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
For this Naija wey we dey so, say you no hold cash no mean say wahala dey o. You wan send money to Male for Villa, just use Momo. You wan buy recharge card or data, just use Momo. You wan pay for market wey you buy, just use Momo. You fit use Momo run plenty things without cash. As long as you get Momo account, no cash, no wahala. And e dey easy to open o. Just dial *671# to open Momo account. Set your PIN, transfer money from your bank account inside your Momo account. Make you fit dey pay for anything, send and receive money sharp because life dey simple with Momo.
My friend, you don't buy new mattress?
Yes, so they even dash me bag of rice join.
For real?
It is real. Buy any Mocha Flora or Mocha Wellbeing Regina mattress with 2 pillows and get a bag of rice free. Visit any accredited Mocha dealer nationwide to purchase. Offer valid while stocks last. Terms and conditions apply. Mocha, adding comfort to life.
Ìfẹ́ tí kò lábàwọ́n ni ìfẹ́ ìyá jẹ́. Bẹ́ẹ̀ kò sí ohun tó dùn tó bíi Indomie alájẹpọnu lákànlọ́. Nítorí náà, fi ìfẹ́ hàn pẹ̀lú Indomie.
Our people they always talk say to get money, person must to work with your body. But since star 73342 hash with Glow don't enter the matter, now only your hand you need to win instant money on Green Lotto with your Glow SIM. Yes, so just dial star 73342 hash on your Glow line to buy Green Lotto tickets with your airtime. Play your favorite games, check your results, and get your winnings as airtime or direct transfer to your bank account because instant money don't day your hands, yo. Glow Unlimited.
32 FM 94.9.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still on to the Break It Dawn's paper review this morning on 32 FM 94.9. And of course, we're going straight into paper analysis this morning. Professor Olo Ojedokun is already seated. Good morning, Prof.
Top of the day to you. And of course, it's a pleasure to be here today.
All right, Prof, let's talk about the federal government suspending fuel subsidy removal. The National Economic Council, NEC, on Thursday in Abuja said it has agreed that petrol subsidy should not be removed as earlier planned for June this year. Now, they are saying that they have decided or deliberated on the issue extensively and come to the conclusion that it will not be wise to remove subsidy as soon as the new administration is trying to settle down to governance. Now, I guess one of the major questions here is what happens to the $800 million that the World Bank disbursed to help alleviate the subsidy removal effect? Because that was the reason why we got that loan in the first place, because when subsidy comes, it might be a bit difficult. So what happens now?
I'm not even certain that loan has come through, but I know that the loan is on offer, and I know that loan is expected to be approved by the National Assembly. But be as it may, I think the issue here is that subsidy, in terms of the budget, subsidy provision was made up until June. And the fact that subsidy provision has been made up until June doesn't mean the money exists. I'm a bit surprised and puzzled by the decision because I thought, you understand, from information that I had received, that we've run out of money and that the subsidy is only being financed by borrowing. But I think the federal government's position is that you cannot just leave it and leave a mess for this incoming government.
But did they not think about that before?
Well, I'm sure they thought about it. They could have removed it a year ago, and they refused. They kicked it into the long grass. But my own view is that whatever way you play it, this government is going to be, new government is going to be left with a mess, whatever way you play it. Because budgetary provision has been made to June. No other provision has been made beyond that. So where does the money come from?
Right.
New loans.
I wanted to ask that because we talked about it on the show that we didn't have enough money to continue to pay and so on.
Yes.
So how do we go about this? Where does this take us really?
Well, I think they're going to have to source for new loans. And that's going to be the responsibility, not of this government, but of the new government. So they're leaving them in a worse mess than anticipated because they haven't told us how that is going to be financed. They just said that the incoming government will sort it out. And they didn't want to remove it now so that the incoming government will not be left with a mess. But whatever way you look at it, they're being left with a mess. It's a mess. And the fact is that except all of a sudden the price of even when the price of oil goes up, we're not even benefiting. That's the problem. So except we get some new resources coming into the economy from that point of view, or get some new soft loans, we're going to continue to be in this mess. The people that I'm worried about, you could say hallelujah for those of us who have been expecting what's going to happen to us next month. You can say hallelujah for that. But shall we say hallelujah in about 6 months' time, or in about 4 months' time, when the reality dawns on us that there's simply no money to cover it? I think, you understand, the people that will be smiling is not just the common man, but the saboteurs, those that smuggle it across the board, those, you understand, that are taking advantage of Nigeria's lower price. They will continue to benefit. And the corrupt people, because I assure you that people not lifting a needle and yet are getting the subsidy payment. The earlier it stops, the earlier we face the reality, the better it will be for us, in my view.
Do you think that this is somehow connected to the postponement of the Dangote refinery? Yesterday we talked about the fact that it's now 2025 instead of this quarter. So does it have anything to do with all of this factored into the fuel issue?
I think it may well do, because, the whole idea was once this subsidy comes off, at least it will be cushioned by the fact that we have our own refinery and we have our refineries coming on stream. That's Port Harcourt, and of course that's Dangote. And I think there must be some connection somewhere. And so maybe they're trying to push it closer and closer till the time we have our refineries working, because that's going to be the only silver lining in the cloud.
All right, Prof, I just want us to also look at this comment coming from President Muhammadu Buhari. He said 2023 election opposition lost due to overconfidence, complacency. And now one will wonder if Mr. President is a court here, because he also benefited from the judicial sector at the time when he was aggrieved over the past elections. And no one actually said he lost as a result of bad tactical moves. Now, for the president to come up with all of this, would we say that is some sort of justification is trying to prove why the APC won this particular election, like what INEC had declared?
Obviously, self-justification, there's no doubt about that. But if you look at some of it, the sense of what is being said, that's on the assumption that he is actually the one articulating that position. You discover that if Kwankwanso had moved in with Obi, you understand, they probably would have been more formidable. And if, of course, Obi and Atiku's camp were together, it would have been more formidable to the APC. So I can get some sense in what he's saying. But my own view is that some will say it's not over till it's over. Let's see what the tribunal comes up with. But I think for now, if these results are upheld, you may say that the president may be justified in some sort of way. But again, is it not the same political party, the APC, that didn't even give Labour Party a chance at all? That thought that these people coming from nowhere in about 6 months won't move the needle electorally, and yet they did. So yes, the president's views might be valid, but at the same time, I think some would say that Labour Party performed beyond expectation.
Shouldn't the president be very careful about this kind of political statement in the face of the judicial process? Because we still do remember that during the elections, he did something by actually indicating who he voted for, like what many people saw. Many felt that because he's the chief executive officer of the country as number one citizen, he shouldn't have actually taken that particular route. Yes. But many people overlooked it because he is the president. Now, looking at that kind of trend, is it healthy for our democracy?
No, that was a violation of the law, and under normal circumstances, he has immunity, can't be prosecuted, but any other person would have been prosecuted. He shouldn't have shown it. The electoral law is quite clear on that. My own view is that I expect him to be mindful, as you said, that there's still a tribunal process going on, and that the tribunal could possibly reverse this decision. So many people say it's almost impossible, but it could happen. And so if I were the president, I would tread very carefully from that point of view. But having said that, I think Mr. President is entitled to say what he thinks, and the court to decide what they want to decide. Some will say it's sub judice, but the fact that it's sub judice still doesn't mean that you can't comment very generally. I think what it means is that you cannot comment on the specifics at this stage of the tribunal's ruling or the tribunal decision. But we'll see what happens from that point of view. Not that people will disagree with Mr. President, but as the president, he's also entitled, of course, to say his views. Normally, he's normally very reserved, in the way he expresses himself, but I think he's chosen to speak at this time.
All right, it seems like the president had a lot to say yesterday. Nigeria's fighting power, strongest in 7 years. Yesterday, he was seen in his military regalia at an event that involved the army and all of that. And he was saying that the fighting power of the Nigerian army had progressively increased since his regime began in 2015, making it one of the strongest in Africa today. I guess we could commend the Nigerian army for their significant fighting power against Boko Haram and the bandits over the last 8 years. And as the tenure winds down, it's only fair to give them kudos. Do you, however, agree that it's been the strongest in the last 7 years?
I don't know about the strength, but what I know certainly is that the uniform he was wearing is the uniform of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, the Field Marshal. Anybody would wear that. So it's not necessarily because he's been a general, but because he is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Our army is certainly stronger than it was when Buhari came in. It's certainly stronger. We must give him that. And I think I salute and I think I bow to the courageous men of the Nigerian Armed Forces for their sacrifice and for willing, to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria. But having said that, I am not certain that it is the strongest, in years or whatever. It's certainly stronger than it was before. But what would we expect Buhari to say? Do you know the amount of money that has been spent? The billions, the trillions rather, that has been spent on defense. So a lot of money has been spent, and some will say to whom much is given, much is expected. Could they have done more? I think that the military could actually do more, but it depends on political leadership. It's not their fault. The political steer has to be firmer, has to be more strategic, has to be more organized. When we get that, we will get much more of the best from Nigerian military, and then maybe we'll be able to say it is the strongest ever.
All right, now let's look at this illegal sale of 48 million barrels of oil. And now Malami is saying, as a matter of fact, appearing when he was subpoenaed before the House of Representatives, and he said, as a matter of fact, that those claims are unfounded because his office was actually linked to this illegal sale. Now the question is, do we even know the quantity of a barrel we produce in a day in Nigeria as it stands? Then what is the nexus between the Malami office and the petroleum industry itself? Now, doesn't it also spell doom for us in terms of the structure of governance we have in Nigeria? How do we have an attorney general that powerful to actually decide, especially when it comes to economic worthiness of Nigeria? He's in the center of it all. Is this man not too powerful here?
Of course, he certainly has some powers, and of course, he certainly should be one of those people claim to be in the kitchen cabinet. But first and foremost, I'm not sure we know the exact amount of oil we produce, the barrels that are lifted, or the level of oil theft that has occurred under this administration. I think there's a lack of accountability, and I think if you go to Saudi Arabia, for instance, if anybody's lifting the oil, it's all computerized. They're able to say the amount of oil, they're able to say the amount of oil that is lifted, they're able to monitor the oil shipments and so on. But it's only in Nigeria that we cannot monitor effectively what's going on. As to the Attorney General's office, he has nothing to do with the sale of oil. It shouldn't. It has nothing to do with it. And him being dragged in suggests that there's some malfeasance or some dodgy stuff going on from that point of view. And of course, he came to speak to the House of Reps under questioning and under oath, from that point of view. I'm not sure he has clarified matters, but I think it's an indictment of this government when officers who are not supposed to have anything at all to do with petroleum and so on and so forth are being dragged in. The questions to be answered, and I hope those questions can be resolved. And I hope his name can be cleared, or his office can be cleared, whatever the case might be.
Do we begin to look at a separate office between the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice? Because it appears that the offices are fused together under one person. Now, do we begin to look at having this particular office unbundled and reducing the power of the AGF, because it's more or less like a backing dog for any administration that comes into being? We saw what the likes of Anduaka did, in spite of the fact that that is very relative and it could be very contextual. And now we also have a Malami again. Is that office not due for unbundling?
Well, I think the office of any minister and the way they operate depends on the chief executive, and it depends on the leeway that he gives his minister, because executive responsibility lies within the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. My own view is that we should even have less ministers. Why? Because we can't even afford what we have. So we need constitutional amendment to reduce the number of ministers. Should we unbundle a Minister of Justice and Attorney General? They're actually two different functions. One actually is acting as the chief government lawyer. The other is actually administering the Ministry of Justice in terms of the people, that personnel that work, in terms of the interface with the judiciary and so on. So they have different functions, ancillary functions working together. My own view is that you could have two different offices. One may be junior to the other. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you have, of course, the Minister of Justice, you have the Attorney General, you have the Solicitor General, and in Scotland, you have the Advocate General. But they are junior, so they are not full-scale ministries, and they don't have the full perks, or perquisites of the office. So I think it can be unbundled in a very low-key way, not creating another empire as we normally like to do in Nigeria. But I think the key point for me is reduce the number of ministers constitutionally, so that at least the burden on the Nigerian state is also reduced.
So the Federal High Court, Abuja, on Thursday, that was yesterday, declined a request seeking an order postponing the 2023 census, slated to hold from 3 to 5 May. The judge, Inyangekwa, refused to grant the application and instead asked the applicant to put the defendant, the MPC, on notice, and on and on like that. You're a lawyer, so you can shed more light on this. Now, we have census coming up in 5 days, literally, and the argument here is we're not ready. There's been no publicity. There's been no adequate publicity. There's been no adequate preparation. How are we insisting on still going ahead with census? If you ask some Nigerians what day census, some people don't know.
Well, you have to remind me anyway. The reality of it is that what happened in the court, interlocutory injunction, is when you rush to the court, you feel there's a real emergency, you feel that the substance matter of the rest will be destroyed if your injunction is not granted, and you do it without notice, which means the other party is not aware. You catch them unaware so that at least you could preserve the substance. And the court is saying, no, this is not an emergency. We can't grant an injunction without hearing the other side. And so they've asked the other side to be served and for them to be put on notice. As to the census, the constitution is clear. Every 10 years, if you have to follow that, now which means the next census ought to have been in 2016. But this government decided to kick it into the long grass. And now they're bringing this date. To me, it's an arbitrary date. You understand? It's not in consonance with the constitution. So they don't have to do it now. We don't even have the money, you understand, to be able to do it successfully. So why do it now? And many of the key questions have been removed. So why is the rush? Why does a government in its dying days, a lame duck government, insist that we must have a census? Is there something untowards going on? Some people always believe that when money is spent in Nigeria, there's some dodgy practices going in, which means embezzlement and maladministration and the lot. I think this government should shelve it and allow the next administration to come and organize it. As you said, I didn't even remember that the census was coming out. I knew it was sometime in May, but not the exact date. And I have not heard about it. Is it the National Orientation Agencies, that what we call them these days? I've not heard jingles. Maybe there are some jingles I've missed on your radio station or other radio stations, but I've not heard it. You understand? So where people are not aware, the census is a national event, and it's an event which ought to have been given adequate publicity, logistics of course sorted out, and of course everybody prepared for it. Because it means when the census that you may have to stay at home, which means stock up and take care of yourself so that you're not moving from place to place. So, but anyway, the government probably knows much more than I do.
All right, before we go on that break, National Assembly leadership tussle. Tinubu governors dump consensus for zoning. Now, consensus arrangement appears to be part of our democratic structure in Nigeria, whether we like it or not. And Orji Uzor Kalu is seeing himself more or less like the man from the southeast that should occupy that particular position. And I've also heard a couple of APC stalwarts saying that he's the man for the job. He should be zoned. Now, at this point in time, do we have the key leadership of the APC dumping the consensus arrangement and, of course, zoning itself?
Well, I think that might not be too accurate. I think what happened was that they said instead of zoning into southeast, south-south, and southwest, let there just be one zone. Since Tinubu's argument was that during the presidency it was just zoned to the south. I mean, it was brought to the south, not any of the sub-zones. And I think his argument is that if that applied to his presidency, when he was going for presidency, then the other zones, you understand, the whole of the west, should be taken as a zone rather than southwest, southeast. And of course, people that were supporting Akpabio wanted it to go to the south-south. And of course, the argument of others, no, we can't have that, from that point of view. Orji Kalu seems to be in the front runner, surprisingly. Why? Because he still has criminal cases against him. And surprisingly, because his antecedents, you understand, in terms of corruption, are not stellar at all. He was convicted, even though the conviction was lifted. He was in prison for quite a while. You may not remember, from that point of view. Is that the kind of person we want as our Senate president? Well, I think the APC know better than I do.
All right.
We have to go on a break.
Okay.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
Hey, heard of the new Samsung Galaxy S23 series? I bet you have. Sleek, powerful machine. Can't wait to cuddle one of those exquisite beauties? It's your lucky day. Samsung has teamed up with Glow to bring you the most amazing offers ever. Happening live only at Glow World outlets nationwide. Buy the Samsung Galaxy S23 series and get 18 gigabytes data absolutely free. There is more. You also get the opportunity to trade in your existing phone or get financing for an upgrade. And if you're one of first 100 trading or device financing customers, you get a whopping 100,000 Naira discount on any Samsung device purchased. So get to a Glow World outlet right now, because this offer is only valid while stocks last.
Unlimited.
ìfẹ́ tí kò lábàwọ́n ni ìfẹ́ ìyá jẹ́. Bẹ́ẹ̀ kò sí ohun tó dùn tó bíi Indomie alájẹpọnu lákànlọ́. Nítorí náà, fi ìfẹ́ hàn pẹ̀lú Indomie.
I'm living the life because I get to Z. Yes. Kọ́ńbù ẹ̀kú àlejò onígbòǹgbò ọ̀nà ẹ̀kú àlejò ẹsẹ̀. Ìbàdàn nílé Olúyọ̀lé ẹ̀kú àmójúbà Tizeti Network Limited pẹ̀lú Tizeti ìlú omi òjò lẹ́ẹ̀ máa lo ayélujára íńtánẹ́ẹ̀tì ní yàwàlù torí pé gbajúgbajà nílé iṣẹ́ Tizeti Network Limited níbi ìpèsè ayélujára lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà fún ilé iṣẹ́ ńláńlá àti olókoòwò kéékèèké lábẹ́ àbúradà Tizeti ẹ lè browse kẹ́ stream kẹ́ sì tún gbá géèmù bó ṣe wù yín láì níkọ̀sẹ̀ pẹ̀lú ìlànà ẹgbẹ̀lẹ́mùkú data kèé máa ṣeré ìwọ ni kò má sọ̀fànù 12,500 naira pé lẹ́ẹ̀fì jẹmùlá data fódìdí oṣù kan gbáko lábẹ́ àbúradà Tizeti láì níkọ̀sẹ̀ ẹ kàn sí wifi.com.ng/oyo ẹ sì lè pe 0122987886 tàbí kẹ́ ẹ tẹ àtẹ̀jíṣẹ́ sí internet@wifi.com.ng ayélujára ní yàwàlù.
32 FM 94.9.
Thank you for staying with us. You're welcome back to the Break of Dawn Papers review on your last station, 32 FM 949 Ibadan. We open the phone lines now to take your reactions. Remember, we're also live on Facebook. It is facebook.com/32FM 949 Ibadan. We're also live on YouTube. You can go on there and drop your comments. Hello, good morning.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I don't see you from UI. The statement connected to President Buhari. It's not something we are expecting from him, but we thank God he's admitting failure. That we shouldn't have, the meaning is that we shouldn't have voted for him. That we shouldn't have, that the party not deserve our vote. And that is the bottom line. But what do we do? When the house that are divided against themselves will never stand. And for that fact, why is it difficult for INEC to upload the results and let the whole world see and compare it from what happened from each word to what they announced up to date? Well, some people are saying some in Nigeria is a country that people like to pretend, people like to portray lies to the world. But we thank God that he's admitting that he is a failure. Let him just back and leave the country. That's the best of today.
All right, 0705 500949 0809 700949. We have comments on our Facebook.
All right, quickly, let's take this from Balkis. And of course, Balkis is saying this morning, good morning. The federal government spent $1.2 million to hire 40 buses, each carrying 49 students. The bus drivers, who were supposed to transport Nigerian students out of Sudan, took the international passport and insisted they wouldn't give them back until the government paid them. These motorists don't have faith in the government. Does that mean the $1.2 million journey is over? They shouldn't tell Nigeria of a supplementary budget of $1.2 million to bring the students safely to Nigeria. And I think that's a question mark there.
All right, 0705 500949. Hello. Hello, good morning. Okay. Do call us back, 0809 700949. Omotayo Luwarutimi says, all right, I'll take that comment after this call. Hello?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Prof, good morning. This is okay. On the people that are supposed to be transported back to the nation, somebody just said something now. And I quite remember vividly today, there was a particular interaction the DG had with a young man who, at the end of the day, DG said God's grace and something, and I think the young man said we didn't employ God, rather they should do the right thing. We talked about 1.2 million yesterday, and somebody actually attacked us and said we don't always appreciate. It's beginning to dawn on us. Now, is that money wasted? Two, how come they held the passports? Actually, they denied. But we know what is happening now with what the young men are actually churning out. They are actually held somewhere there. We need to get them out. The starting point first was, how should we get them? Now, are we going to abandon our young people over there? These Nigerians, they are Nigerians. Please, I appeal to them. Let them look for a way to get these people back. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right.
All right, let's take more comments on our Facebook page. Raji Afiza Biola Raja says, good morning, Denike and Bolabo, and about the suspension of fuel subsidy removal. As our present government shifted the responsibility to incoming government so as to save their head. Tinubu government must be very careful about this trap situation and put what is necessary in place, make refineries working before the subsidy will be eventually removed so as to avoid denting of the government image. All right.
Hello, good morning.
I'm John Njoku. Thank you, Professor.
Yes.
The president voted during the presidential election in Katsina State, and immediately campaign or urged voters in Faraway Adamawa to vote for Binani of PPC in the Guber election, which was to come up even 3 weeks later. We saw what happened in the Adamawa Guber election, characterized with a drama. Can the president equally explain to Nigerians why the drama and why Binani lost out? That is my question. John Njoku is my name. Thank you.
All right, Prof, do you want to react to that question?
Well, obviously the president is not going to engage and has refused to engage in the specifics. He's only spoken about the generality. But of course, you have to ask the question why somebody was so popular in our state, you understand, could not even ride on the momentum. Was it overconfidence?
All right, we'll take more comments on our Facebook page. Sulaiman Sherif says, good morning, 32 FM crew. Regarding to the process of evacuation of Nigerian students in Sudan from 40 buses to 15 buses, at the end of the day, 13 buses conveyed 49 students per bus, which the total number is 637 students. How far about the remaining of 4,863 out of the 5,500 students? The compounding problem facing Nigeria is a leadership failure and corruption. No sign of sincerity of purpose to achieve common goal.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. This is Ningamari calling from Apata. I think Malami should not be allowed to go scot-free. Doctor, let's ensure that Malami is being tried, and let's ensure while we are with the outcome of the trial. Now, on the issue of the subsidy removal, what Buhari is trying to do is last-minute robbery. Meaning that this thing is not inevitable. You spent 8 years. Your 8 years will be completed in the next how many weeks now? And now you want to remove subsidies. I think it's a last-minute robbery. Let the incoming additional come and let us see what I'm going to do to that regard. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for your comment. Remember, we're live on Facebook, 32FM 949 Ibadan. And of course, you can call us on our numbers 0705 5000 949 and 0809 7000 949. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, we can hear you.
My name is Ekele Baladi from Malaka Shabori. Now that the subsidy removal issue has been suspended and to be handled by the new government, what is going to happen to the $800 million we secure from IMF to pushing the effect of subsidy removal? That's my question. Have a nice day.
All right, thank you very much. Omotayo Oluwarotimi says, I do not think the American president or the British prime minister ever wears a military uniform, though I might be wrong about that. Those people there really rejoice in being presidents or prime ministers. They are usually more concerned with the act of governing. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
This is John Omarwaju from Adowo. On the issue of Mr. President, they have said that overconfidence affected the opposition. Well, I think that should be the Mr. President his own comment, and he's entitled to his own opinion. But to me, I disagree to Mr. President, because Mr. President needs to come out and also tell us about IREF. Though INEC has played that one, but he needs to also talk about it also, so that we know that he balances everything. And that's for that one. And then for subsidy suspension, to me, I've said this, that the issue of subsidy to me is like APC said in 2014 and 2015, that it's a scam. It's still a scam. And they are here to tell us the truth about it. Because even if you are saying that you are paying the subsidy, are you not giving the crude oil to those that refine our oil? Are you not giving them the crude oil? Is it not after giving them the crude oil, you are still paying the money that you call subsidy to Nigerians? So this is what I'm against it. That look, this is not about removing of subsidy. It's about fighting the corruption. And those that in behind this corruption of subsidy, they are in government. That's why it's difficult for the government to say you want to fight them. That is why he keep on telling us about subsidy removal. Why did they subsidy it? Where is $800 million that we go and borrow? Where is it? Tell us about everything. That's the part of corruption I'm talking about subsidy. If you collect it or you loan it or you collect loan of $800 million, you have to tell us about this one to thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Prof, you wanted to react?
Well, let's just be very clear about subsidy. The reason why we have subsidy is because our refineries are not working. So this oil is taken abroad, is processed, is refined. It's not done free of charge, and it's landed back in Nigeria. All those costs, when you take them into account, require some element of subsidy, or we pay for it ourselves, and the government is paying for those costs. That's why we have subsidy. The problem is that there are people claiming to have done this without even doing it. And the problem also is that the amount of subsidy we are paying is inflated because some of these actually go abroad, for other people to take benefit from. So that's subsidy. The other one on the military.
Hello, good morning.
Good God.
Okay, 0705 5949 0809 7949.
And quickly, this is from Omotai Oluwarotimi on Obamiro on Facebook. President Buhari was wearing a military uniform during a military parade. That might not be very right, and it sort of sends a wrong message. It's causing me a bit of sewing here.
I just wanted to give some context to that very, very quickly. You see, the people that do it in the United Kingdom will be the royalty, you understand? We fuse state, you understand, the head of state functions with that of the prime minister's functions in the office of the president. That's a ceremonial function. That's why it does that, you understand? So.
Okay. All right, we have some more calls. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Auntie. This is Onu from LA.
All right.
Yeah. About the statement credited to the president on the election, I think I agree with him. And I like the way the professor there has analyzed the issue. Supposing Atiku and Obi did not separate, and of course Kwankwaso, there is no how that APC would have won. But it was overconfidence that even made the PDP in particular to think that zoning the chairmanship to the south is not necessary. They believe that they are surely going to win the election. So I agree with him. They believe there's nobody that will vote for the APC. But then they have come to see the results. Good morning.
All right, it's time for us to go. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's about time to leave the studios. Professor Oluwajaduko, any final words as we leave?
Well, at least we have some respite in terms of the fuel. Let's see whether this bridging space, the government will make the best of it.
All right, thank you for doing this with us as always. I am Adenike Ademwago.
And I'm GBOLABO Famous School. Bye for now.